Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hi there, welcome to the Health Oddity podcast with me, Paul Bassett, and then we've got James St. Pierre.
Hello.
Hey, there we go, yep. One thing we're getting used to is not just waving on a podcast, but also speaking. And with Peter as well, Peter Lant.
Hiya.
Fantastic. There we go. We're starting to become more professional as we go on. Because
Exactly.
those of you who've been listening from the start will know that we've done 3 podcasts. This is the 4th one. The first one was about where do you start? And that seemed like an apt place to start. Then we went into lessons of lockdown because we've recently come out of lockdown. It was very important. The one thing that lockdown kind of laid bare was that people's habits became very important. And so episode 3 was about habits. Today, we're going to take a look at goal setting and what that actually means. So what we're going to start doing is just going through some of our own goals and how we approach them, but also trying to find out from each of us. And I'm interested to know how James and Peter approach this with their own clients, because everyone comes to us for a reason. And if we're not getting them a result, then what are we doing? But a result has got to mean something, and that's where goal setting comes in. But it's never quite as simple as it sounds. I'm sure many people who are listening to this podcast have done their SMART goals, things like that. There's loads of different acronyms. There's loads of different ways of thinking about your goals. And it's not that the way we're going to suggest is the only way, but hopefully we'll get you thinking about where you start in terms of goal setting, what is actually a realistic goal, and what you do when you've achieved it, because that's one of the big challenges to stop people yo-yoing on diets and coming in and out of activity is once you've achieved the goal, we can often be left with a vacuum. And so having a really clear idea of how it fits into your global health perspective is what we'd like to discuss today. So we never talk about just very simple topics. We're talking about big things. It's a big podcast, this, with exciting personalities and exciting subjects. So I suppose we might as well start. I'll start with Peter today. We've been talking about goal setting and exactly what that means. So what does goal setting mean to you, and how do you apply it to your life?
Well, yeah. I mean, this came out of one of my guys asked me. You know, I basically said to everybody, you know, we're looking for questions from you guys, from the listeners. And so one of my guys asked me. He said, like, you know, he asked me a few questions, but one of it was, what are your goals? And we were just talking about this just before we started recording, and James was saying, you know, some people like to have solid goals. I want this. I want to be able to lift this, or I want this in 3 months, or whatever. And I don't necessarily work like that for myself. People who work like that, I'm happy to help them, or who want things like that. But I'm kind of, it's more of a process, and just form a process, and then you'll get something at the end of it. But it's getting on with that process. So I set myself goals by going on courses, or like doing things like I'm doing the Strong First lifter thing certification in November. Hopefully I'm doing that. Depends what this pandemic goes about it, but hopefully it's still on. But I did that 2 years ago and I failed it because I wasn't ready. I just wasn't strong enough, you know. But so my goal was to do it and pass it, and I didn't pass it, but I learned a lot along the way. So that was 2 years ago. So this time I'm like, right, that's my goal. And I've had that for the last year. Again, COVID is kind of scuppered it a bit because I couldn't get to a barbell for 5 months, but I'm back in the gym now, and it's actually looking like, so I hit my goal just before lockdown. So that's given me confidence that I can do it. I've got that, and then I'm also, but it's not all about fitness as well. This is the thing, because people go, right, I've got to set, you want me to set a goal. What does that mean? But once you get used to the process of doing it, and we can talk about the processes later on, but once you get used to the process of doing it, you can set it for anything. So I'm doing a course called PDTR, which is it's proprioceptive deep tendon reflex, but it's kind of, it's learning not how to treat people, but how to get rid of like niggling injuries and stuff like that. There's way more to it than that, but it's messing about with the central nervous system, okay? Because the central nervous system obviously governs everything that we do, and it changes like more than second by second, okay? So when you're trying to deal with something, you're trying to deal with someone who's got like, you know, who's got a niggling injury or something like that. It depends on the state that they're in. It depends like on the weather, whether it's hot or cold. It depends what smells are in the room, all of that. So I've been learning about that. Again, COVID has put a stop to that. So it's meant to be starting up again in October. But my goal is to then get through that, you know, and learn from it and start to apply it. So rather than the fitness element side of it, because I've done loads of that for many years, I'm not saying I know everything, but I know enough to help the guys who I help, guys in their 40s, who want to get back in shape. But there's way more to it than that, as we know. So my goals are mainly based around how to improve myself and make myself stronger and gain the knowledge I need to be able to help the guys who I want to help. Because I just happen to be that guy as well. So I want to help myself, but rather than, because like loads of people can work out themselves, loads of people can know stuff, but applying it to helping other people or teaching it to other people is the art, right? Which that's what I strive for all the time, and be able to just teach other people or be able to use it to help other people.
So
you know, I'm not going to be teaching people PDTR because, like, you know, my guy, it'll just blow their heads. It's blown my head, you know, it's blown my mind. So
how do you make peace with the fact that self-development doesn't always give you a tangible outcome?
Absolutely. And the whole thing, so this goes back to the mastery thing that was spoke about, I think, in the very beginning, in the very first podcast. So the George Leonard, I keep looking over there because it's over there. But George Leonard, the mastery book, you've got to learn to love the plateau, because you're going to spend a long time here just going like, well, like no progress. But that time that you've put in means you will progress at some point. You know, so that's how I look at it, and it's learning. I've just learned to enjoy the process of doing things, which comes from the building of habits. You know, so this is good that you've gone back over what the previous podcasts were, because it was where to begin, and we've all started and stopped, and then you finally find a place that you are, become comfortable with that, and get started. You know, and then you start to create habits around that, and how do I use those habits to create a process that I can follow to progress. And I've written something down here which comes from what you said in the very beginning as you were doing your little intro. That's
I know.
Quite what's the word anyway?
Condescending.
I felt yes. A great sense of responsibility. Right?
While you were doing your amazing intro,
thanks.
And I wrote down, it's your current goal is your next starting point, because you said you can feel empty once you reach your goal. You're like, what do I do now? You know, Olympians have that and all of that, don't they? They go and win an Olympic gold, and then they go like, right, well, that's my life over now. What do I do next? Who's the boxer? What's his name? Gypsy King.
Oh, Tyson Fury.
Tyson Fury, he talks about that a lot. He's like, you know, he's had like lots of mental health problems and everything. And he talks about that a lot in lots of the podcasts I've seen him on. And he's like, you know, what's next? So that's what I say. Once you've got to have a plan that once you do reach your goal, what's the next one going to be? Because that's your new starting point.
But if part of the pleasure is the actual process, then you're probably going to have it's like having constant blood sugar. You know, you're not going to have the highs and lows. You're going to be able to, you know, because if you're enjoying the actual act of learning, then, you know, there's less, I suppose, anxiety in that journey, I suppose.
Absolutely. So that's what we talk about all the time, is like, rather than learning techniques, you learn principles, and then you can apply it to anything, and then you start to love learning. And then once you love learning, it's just, there's no end, is there?
Yeah.
What about you, James? So your goal setting, I mean, obviously we have goals around our businesses, but in terms of your own personal development, both physically, mentally, whatever, where's your perspective now, having come out of lockdown, and has anything changed over the last 6 months in terms of the way you approach your own goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what you've both already touched on, there's periods in my life where I have very specific goals, working towards something that's very specific, so it's very tangible. You know, working towards, you know, in the past, I've maybe run marathons and things like that. So you're working to you're training to a specific time or done certifications where you're training to hit certain standards on a certain date. So that really helps focus the mind, obviously, which is good because you're really targeted towards something very specific. But then at other times I have periods where I'm more, I suppose on that even keel, kind of coasting, and maybe taking periods of time to just enjoy where I am, and maybe trying to learn new skills, or we've been talking about things like Indian clubs and mace spells and things where you don't necessarily have a competition that you're aiming to hit, or a certification you want to get. It's more just about trying to practice it for 10, 15 minutes a day and just feeling that gradual process over the course of a week. I did a lot of kind of NLP work and stuff like that. So with my clients, I used to be very, very much that as part of you starting and as part of you training, you have to have a written down goal. And we followed a big system to get them written down. And for some people, that works really, really well. I've signed up a few people recently, just in the last couple of weeks. I've got a couple of the goals down because I knew we were going to be talking about it. So one chap was, these are very specific. I'll row a 1 minute 45 seconds or better, 500 meters by October the 17th, 2020 at level 7 or above on the Concept 2 rower. So a very, very specific target, And another one this was a great guy. This was someone who's really kind of type A. He wanted to lose weight, and he went and spent, I think it was a lot of money. It was thousands and thousands of pounds on like these 3 custom made tailored suits, and he had them made too small for him currently, and he'd spent lots of money on these suits. So another goal that we've got written down, because he messaged them to me, was that by October the 31st, 2020, he's going to fit into all of his suit trousers and be able to wear them with pride, knowing that he looks and feels better and is healthier for it, So he's actually gone and really created some leverage for himself and bought these suits that don't fit him. So he's done that,
Another one, like a lot of people have this huge wardrobe that's just sitting there with thousands of pounds. They're quite happy it gives them existential anguish that they can't get in it, but then they don't seem to have a process to get back into them. So this guy's obviously said, right, well, there's my target. Now I need to have a solution. I need to have someone to get there.
Yeah. Another one was the same guy again. He wants to be able to climb by the end of 2020. We've got a sort of a 5 or 6 meter hanging rope at Unique Results for people to climb, and he's never been able to climb a rope. So by the end of the year, he wants to be able to climb up to the top of the rope and touch the thing that is supported by. So what we got, another guy is a 5K under 30 minutes just to improve his sit and reach. So these are really tangible things, obviously, which some people respond really well to, and it's great to have and I always try and get people to kind of spread a range of kind of goals, not necessarily, I try and avoid people purely being sort of ruled by the scales, if you like, so take away the kind of the need to just step on the scale, because that's the easiest one, especially for women, that they come in and they want to see a certain number on the scale. And I don't have a problem having something, around there that's kind of a goal, but I also want to have other things that people are working towards, which are a bit more lifestyle based or performance based, or, we had one lady that was great. She joined us and she said, my big goal is I want to be able to go skiing again. She hadn't been skiing for about 15 years and she's in her 50s, I think. And in February this year, she came on our ski trip with us and we got some great photos and she was absolutely fantastic. So, I've kind of moved away a little bit from having to have these written goals, because a lot of our members, like I've said before, 50s, 60s, 70s now, it's more about having a good quality of life, spending quality time with the family, being able to run around with the grandkids, not falling asleep in the chair at 6 o'clock in the evening, having more energy. So it's a lot more fluid and less, like you said, I think, Paul, the word you used, less sort of tangible or measurable for some people, and I'm fine with that now with the kind of population that I mainly work with. No,
that all makes sense. I mean, it's not dissimilar. I mean, it's not dissimilar to how I start working with clients. I mean, most of the time I sit down and spend an hour with a client right at the beginning. We'll have probably a 20-minute call see if the program's right for them, and then we'll sit down and have a conversation. And yes, I do try and have some kind of written goal to a degree, but mainly that's a tool to provide context for the journey. Because if someone sits down and says, I want to be ripped, I want to look amazing, blah, 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 I'm like, okay, great. Okay. So here's the context of how this will be achieved. Is this going to align with the time you're willing to dedicate? You know, because if you really want a six pack, we can do that. There's no reason why not. And given where you are at this moment in time, my estimation, it will be 3 to 6 months, whatever the timeline I give, but you're going to have to do this, and you're not going to be able to do this. Do you really want the goal? So sometimes I try and make it as explicit as possible, whether or not the goal is important. And then you kind of, it's not that you disregard the goal, it's just you end up coming at it from a different angle, and you say, well, okay, so if you do want to be leaner, you don't want to be that lean. Okay, so and you're more interested in being consistent because you haven't been consistent for the last year, and you don't want to injure your back because your back's hurting. And then you don't want to quit because you quit typically. And then before you know it, you've suddenly got a lifestyle goal. With a lifestyle goal, I think it's the best. It works very well for our programs because that's generally the way I've set everything up. But one of the big challenges longer term is that people do lose focus and trying to keep, even though they've achieved that lifestyle goal where they're exercising regularly, they're eating a bit better, it's quite it can be a softer approach. And that's what I often wrestle with, is sometimes that softer approach, which I think is more sustainable, sometimes on the other side of the coin means that people get too comfortable and they drift back into old ways, depending on what's driving them. And I suppose that's why I've asked, both you and Peter about what keeps you interested in the journey, because ultimately if you're not setting these big goals, you're finding value in other areas. Because when you do a course, like the one you're doing at the moment, Peter, about the central nervous system, like you say, you're not going to come out a master of the central nervous system. I mean, if you ever meet a personal trainer and says, yes, I've done a qualification in the elderly, or I've done a qualification in diabetes management. How long was it? Well, it was a day long. Well, you're not an expert, but it's good that you're educating yourself, of course. It's being able to try and find that constant value. And I suppose where I'm trying to drive the conversation is that those goals are based on a value system. And we started this entire podcast kind of endeavor in the initial podcast one with you two particularly talking about your 3 main values, because those are the values that are driving you individuals, probably driving your business as well. And actually, when you start getting those things correct, everything else has to organize itself in order to make those things, express those things to their full. And I always say, I worked with a lady once, and she said, like, health is really important. I said, so where is it actually in its importance? Is it above work? So it's definitely above work. Okay. And obviously it's not above your kids. Well, it's close to my kids because I know that if I'm really healthy, then I'm going to be a better parent. And then once we got down to it, she just couldn't make the time. She said, I'm too busy. I haven't got the time. And I had to be honest with her. I said, well, it can't be that important. And that's fine. It is fine. Right? I mean, there's lots of things that aren't important to me. But you just got to make peace with it, you know? What drives me with my goals is that I kind of, there's certain things I make peace with that I don't want to develop. There's certain skills which, it's not that they don't interest me. I love playing the bass, but I haven't played it properly for like 10 years. I played it all the time for a while, but I think if it was really, really important for me, then I would have dedicated probably as much time as I'm dedicating to my health. It's just that my health became much more important. And just like you guys, I got this kind of thirst for knowledge and exploration. And with that comes kind of lower tier goals, which is at the moment, I'm exploring the kettlebell sport thing and suddenly realizing, I'll do a competition at the end of the year. Obviously COVID hit. And then I think, Jesus, it's a painful sport. Everything hurts. And actually what I realized is having to develop the mental endurance to deal with it more than the physical endurance. Yeah, so it's basically like pain for 10 minutes non-stop. So it's not, I don't know why there's a goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to what you kind of said about if you don't have any goals, you can just kind of drift and get very complacent. So I think what I personally do is if someone's in more of a kind of a lifestyle, I suppose you call it like a lifestyle, a sustainable kind of approach, or Tracy Rifkin calls it like, rather than kind of maintenance, she calls it permanence, because you want to be like that permanently now. You're not just maintaining somewhere. That is become, your new plateau. That is where you are. You've moved up a level. So we do try and keep people focused on the improvements that they make within their training. So even if they're in a kettlebell class and they're usually using, a 12 kilo kettlebell for the majority of exercises, and then eventually they progress up and they're maybe using a 16, then that's a very sort of a tangible improvement that people have made. If they're using a mace and they're using a 4 kilo and they go to a 5 kilo, then that's great as well. And plus we host the Tactical Strength Challenge twice a year as well, which we encourage lots of members to take part in. So that's kind of like a 6th monthly competition, I suppose, but it's really something that you do every 6 months, and you just basically try and improve upon what you did 6 months previously, in terms of deadlifts and flexed arm hang and kettlebell snatches. And we run a slightly modified one for people who aren't quite up to it. So it's one hand swings, trap bar deadlift, and a straight arm hang, but they're kind of ways that we can retest and we can show improvement, but improvement that just kind of seems to happen through consistent training, and then, maybe 8 weeks before the Tactical Strength Challenge, we'll focus more on it and then people will improve. But if you're training consistently for 12 months, 3 times a week, for example, you're gonna improve gradually over the period. And it's just then really just about showing people and measuring that they are improving and they are making progress. Because I think, like you say, that's why most people leave commercial gyms, because they just go along 2 or 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 times a week, and they're basically just treading water. They're just going through the motions. They're going from one machine to the next, and it's just, but there's no purpose to it. There's no end in sight. There's no measurable kind of metric of improvement. It's just going to the gym and trying to burn off calories, basically, which is not a great way to spend your leisure time. I don't think personally.
Yeah. The way I see that is it goes with what we talked about in previous podcasts is reining people in, because like you said, people say, I need a trainer to push me more. It's like, no, rein you in, start you where you're at, build those habits of, because the first thing you need to be able to do is do this consistently. So if you can make your goal just to create habits and do something consistently, once you've got that ingrained and you are doing that, then you can start to put numbers to it, I think. And then you can, like the Tactical Strength Challenge or whatever, and then you can say, right, I want to be able to lift the 24, or I want to be able to deadlift this, or I want to be able to do that, because you've got that, you've developed the skill.
Hierarchy.
Because if you start putting numbers on, I don't know, if you start putting numbers on a deadlift when you have, it's like with the bass, I play bass as well, actually, Paul, and I'm the same as you. It's not a priority, so I haven't done it for years.
You play, James? Do we have a band?
Triangle.
He can sing.
I played that. What's it called? That computer game? Is it Rock Band or something with a drum kit a little while ago? But that's about it.
I saw a thing a while ago, and it was the triangle player in a thrash metal band, and it was just a triangle player with an electric whisk, just ready to go.
I was about to say, all those loaded carries on a Sunday morning, you should be lifting amplifiers, basically.
Yeah, that still gets.
I could be the what's it? The roadie. I could be the roadie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think. Once you've got those habits in place, and once you've got that consistency, then you can start to put numbers on things or have specific goals, because you've overcome everything that was in the way. I'm talking to somebody about that at the moment, actually, who has got a bit stuck. So they said to me, I think I need a new goal, and it was like, okay. And there's a process that I use. So there's a couple of questions, and it's like, what do you want, right? And most people think they want to lose weight, so that's just what most people think. But then it's like, why do you want it? And then they'll go, well, because it'll make me feel better. Okay. So I got this person to actually, this was after we did this process. So I'll talk about that in a second. But afterwards I said, just start writing down why. And don't stop like after 2 sentences. Sit, give yourself 10 minutes or so and sit and write. And they've come back to me going, God, all this stuff came out that I didn't know I was thinking and all that. Because you hide stuff, don't you? And then the next question is, what's going to be the biggest obstacle? You know, and there's going to be lots of things: kids, husband, wife, job, all of that. All those things are external. All those things can be dealt with. You know, you can get away from work at some point. You can do something at lunchtime if it's going for a walk. You know, the kids, kids need looking after, but you can find a bit of time where you can do something at home. Wives and husbands can be more supportive and all of that. So what you're looking for is an internal obstacle, something that only you can control. That is the thing that's stopping you. And usually that is like, you know, boredom eating or emotional eating or whatever, if we're talking about weight loss. And then the fourth thing is what plan? What are you going to do about that one thing, that one obstacle? So I spoke to this person about it and they said, you know, I want to lose a stone. Why do you want that? Because it'll make me feel better. They've already lost 3 stone. So I'm like, hang on, why do you want to lose? Like your goal is the same as the last one because you're not feeling good right now, even though you've lost 3 times as much. So, and it was because I'll feel better. I'll fit into my clothes. This person wanted to get into some clothes as the last goal. They're now in those clothes and they were like, they got into those clothes a stone ago. And now they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I wear that. Like, it wasn't a suit. It was something else, but it's like, oh, I wear that all the time now. And it's like, so, you know, that's not even a thing. The goal that you set, you got there, but it hasn't created what you wanted because you want to do the same thing again. So this person has then gone away and started answering the second question again. Why do you want it? And the biggest obstacle was emotional eating, not having to track calories, not wanting to be told what to do, not wanting to have to give things up. So when they've written it all down, it's like, right, your goal is now going to be to get past that because the weight loss will happen as a result of that anyway. You know, so weight loss is a horrible topic. It's a horrible topic because that's what people think they want. And most of the people I work with think that. And in the first 28 days, I'll allow them to think that. But at the end of that 28 days, they might be like, well, I've only lost half a kilo, but I've lost like 2 inches off my waist and my clothes are fitting better and I feel great. And it's like, well, there you go then. So have I convinced you that that's not the thing, even though it'll probably happen? Because if you develop those habits and you make it consistent, it's going to happen anyway.
So that reminds me of a thing I saw about Conor McGregor. I do really like Conor McGregor because what I like is the way he articulates his plans. And he has a goal, which is obviously to win. And then I saw some documentary about how he visualizes every single step, not just the goal, because there was some YouTube video about a psychologist and analyzing his kind of rhetoric and the way he approaches his fights. And it talks about the fact that you can get a payoff for just having the goal. You get this kind of rush of endorphins, like, oh, I've done it. I've kind of thought about something positive. But then there's no individual plan to get there. And so what you guys are talking about is like, what do we do to break down this into manageable chunks? So we've got small ways of getting there. So suddenly we get there and actually the goal might not be very, very important. You know, it's like, I'm sure for him, when he wins the fight, it's not like, that's it. He's quitting. He's retiring. There's another goal. So that it's got to fit in a context of something. And then that thing has got to have an individual context as well. But I suppose the other thing, and I'm just aware of our time, is the missing element. I suppose we're kind of implying in our conversation, but we're not really making verbal, is the power of community to drag people kicking and screaming into results. And so a lot of the things that you, for example, James, that you're doing with the Tactical Strength Challenge, it is that accountability network which creates structure and helps people in time. Sometimes you'll not have a goal, but you're part of something bigger. You know, I mean, we're part of countries. This is the kind of a sense of national identity. There are people who are part of companies who have a sense of company identity. And we can atomize these things and think about individuals and their individual goals, but sometimes we actually work as a collective. And if there's a culture of success, then in a way, it's less important that you have those individual goals. I'm not saying be a drone, but actually, if you're in an environment of health, you'll create health, and you'll be less inclined to sit there mulling over your goals constantly if just the environment and the people you hang out with are positive individuals who are thinking about health, and the nature of behavior of the group is driving towards excellence. Yes, there's got to be those things, but the group is very powerful.
I was talking to someone the other day, and it was a quote I think I shared. I think it might have been from James Clear actually, and it's something like, if you want to adopt a new behaviour, join a group where that behaviour is the norm. So if you want to get good at walking and you want to do more walking, join a Ramblers Society or a walking group. If you want to get better at cycling, join the local cycle club. So put yourself in the environment of people who are already doing and are continuing to do what it is that you're wanting to do. So exactly, you are. It's what was the quote? There was another one that I had. So it's a similar sentiment, but around, the community that you surround yourself with and the people that you hang around with, they're going to dictate largely your results, because you will live up to the expectations of those around you. So, if you want to give up smoking, don't hang around with the 10 mates that you've got who all smoke. It's simple. So, it's fantastic. I think community is massive. And I think that's what, obviously, the three of us have got. Communities that we all, work with and kind of try and develop and grow. And hopefully we'll develop and grow a Health Oddity community, collectively, that will be listening to this podcast, that we'll be able to have a wider impact on as well.
That'd be brilliant. I think just touching on that, the way, because I see it work with the stuff you put out on social media, James, and it works with my guys as well, is when someone starts, they can see very quickly, they can see the process. Because I'll be like, Dave, when he started 4 years ago, he didn't touch a weight for 2 weeks because he couldn't even get in the positions to do it. So I wouldn't let him. And he was perfectly fine with that. And he was like, I'll trust you. And now he's snatching a 24 kilo bell and all of that sort of stuff. But what will happen is, when someone new turns up, we'll all stand around and have a chat during rest periods and that, and then they'll get talking like, so where did you start? What were you using when you first began? And then it'll be like, God, looks quite heavy. How are you using that? And it's like, because I've been coming 3 times a week for the last 4 years and sticking to the process. So then that person can then see this is exactly what happens. But then they'll be like, well, how long did that take? And it took me a year to even like get from one weight to the next weight or whatever. And then other people might be like, it took me a year to get like all the way through it. And now, because they just progress quicker. So it actually lays it out in front of the person so they can see where they're at and where they can get to, because like we can all do that, but people go, yeah, well, you do it for a living. So that's easy. And it's like, which it isn't, but it's like, yeah, we get that. So it's showing them like, okay, it's not just me, it's people who've got jobs and kids and stuff. They can do it as well.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think we might have discussed it last time, or one of the previous ones, where people want to see someone like them who's been on the same journey that they're going on. And if you can show them if you can show them a very similar person with very similar circumstances who started where they're starting, and in 6 months or 8 months or 12 months, this is where they are, then it's that marketing term, social proof, isn't it? They can see, you're not just telling them, they can see someone and they can go up to that person, they can talk to them and say, wow, I saw where you started from, that's where I am, have you got advice for me? And that's where real, like the word that Paul used, culture, really comes in, because then it's not just you doing the coaching, it's the community doing the coaching and helping each other, and it's the people who are more experienced, talking to the people who are new, and it's kind of, it's that kind of, again, like Paul said, the whole community wants all the individual parts of the community to do better and help each other, which is you know, I think that's if we can get to that kind of place, then it's then we're doing our job well, you know.
Damn right, love it.
Fantastic. So I think the conversation has hit its peak. It's only going to be downhill from now. So why not?
Always leave them wanting more, is what you're saying.
Always want them leaving more. Exactly. We're going to save our valuable chat till the next. I don't know what we're going to.
They should have stopped after Superman 2, shouldn't they?
Exactly.
Oh, God, yes.
Yours too.
I miss Richard Pryor though.
Yeah. That's our pop culture reference of the day.
There we go. Well, I can't top that. So yes, well, as you know, we're always looking for new subjects. So if you do like this podcast, please subscribe to the podcast. It's now on iTunes. It's on Google Podcast Store. It's on Spotify. It's on all the other ones. I don't know what the other ones are called, but if you subscribe, then I think that helps us. I believe it does. And share it to any friends as well, and add yourself to the Facebook group. So next week, we haven't got a plan yet. I'm sure it will be very, very well thought out. But it will be lovely to have you guys listening to the podcast again. So it's bye from me, Paul Bassett. From you, James.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Peter.
Ta-ra! And thanks for listening. Yeah.
Sorry.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.